My book, The God Who Riots, came out on August 23rd, so today is officially 1 month out. This thing has been out there in the world for a whole month. And thank you for everyone who's already gotten the book. I really appreciate it. And everyone who hasn't, go get this book already. Buy it from wherever you get books. The audiobook is out now too. Get the audiobook, the ebook, the paperback, all of it. And so now I've had some distance from the book. I finished the final edits of the book last October. And as I've moved from October, I feel like I've begun to process that whole season of writing a lot better these days. I learned a lot about myself, about the things I was writing about, and about just how I approach things in general, like my patterns and habits. When you're always working on smaller projects like videos or articles, some of those unhealthy patterns can go undetected. But working on this very huge, biggest project I've ever worked on in my life, book, oh yeah, all those patterns came to the surface. So I wanted to make this video. 8 things I wish I knew before I wrote my first book, and what I'm telling myself for the next one. Because this isn't me just trying to preach at you all and saying I have the answers for how to write a book. This is really just me learning my own patterns and what I can do better and what I'm looking forward to as I think of the next one. And I'm trying to really give myself a more healthier experience as I move on to planning the next book. So some of these may not apply to you, but I think most of them could apply to you. And that's if you're writing or you're just making something, being creative in general, or if you're just interested in hearing the things I learned. 1, don't edit while you write. Vomit out the first draft. Write everything that comes to mind. Get it all down, knowing you'll change or delete a lot of it. That part is easier when you have something to work with. This was my first big struggle as I started to write the book. I would write a sentence or a paragraph and then struggle to go on to the next one because I wanted to make that sentence or paragraph or half sentence as good as it could possibly be. And that ended up making the writing process so much slower. And eventually I realized I just need to write everything, knowing that I'm doing bad writing and knowing that a bunch of parts could be cut out. And it's so much easier when you can separate those two roles, have your editor hat in one role and the writer hat in another role. But when you try to do both at the same time, it's so difficult. It's way easier to have a giant blob of junk that you just cut down and chip away at until you have something you like than trying to build a perfect piece by perfect piece by perfect piece. Rip that first draft out of you. 2, don't pack your book with smarter people's quotes just because you want to be taken seriously. People will read the book because they want to read you, so give them you. This was also a big struggle for me at the very beginning of writing the book. I had a lot of insecurities about my own voice and if I'm qualified enough to be writing a book at all. And so I felt the need to include all these quotes from writers that are better than me and smarter than me and have already talked about this stuff way before me. And first of all, that's a bad idea because that's just a boring book to read. Just a bunch of people's quotes with just a little bit of the author's voice in between some of those quotes. But I also realized I needed to learn how to trust myself. Trust that I really do have enough worth saying on my own. And I got this book deal because they also believed I had something worth saying. Also, something I ended up doing in the late editing process was going through the draft and just removing these paragraphs of other people's quotes, thinking at first that it would ruin what I'm saying and make it not make sense, but then realizing, oh wait, just taking these paragraphs out of someone else's words and just leaving mine there, oh wait, it actually does flow together. Or I could put like a sentence here to connect some of it. And I realized like, oh yeah, this is all my words. I do have enough worth saying. 3, don't write for your imaginary critics. Spending space defending yourself against future critics and all their potential counterarguments is wasted space that could be used to speak to the people that the book is actually meant for. There were several points of writing the book where I felt like, okay, I made this point, but these conservative Christians are gonna counter it by saying this or bringing that up or twisting that idea. And I felt like I needed to address all of that. And it got to the point where it felt like, okay, now I'm addressing certain conservative points that I think my average reader either doesn't even know about or really doesn't care about because they're not these conservative Christian critics. And I also had to realize that these future potential critics I had in my head are going to misrepresent the book anyway, no matter what I write or how I write. And why am I wasting space on them when this book isn't even for them? Write for the people that you're writing for, not for the random person that disagrees with everything you say that might happen to get a hold of what you're writing. 4. Don't waste your writing energy on frivolous things. Explaining something you haven't written yet is writing energy. Arguing online is writing energy. Protect it. I learned a lot about managing my own energies and realizing certain areas of my life where I was just putting too much energy that was bringing me more harm than anything. And then realizing, oh yeah, this energy that I do have, this creative energy, this writing energy, I need to be very careful with it. I need to have more respect for this energy and protect it and use it wisely. And I think the biggest hard pill to swallow for me was that you don't have unlimited energy. There's always a limit every day, and you need to rest, and you need to do other things, and you need to be mindful and to contemplate and create and work and be with friends. You need to balance that well because your energy is always going to be limited. So learning how to mindfully manage that energy has been really helpful for me. 5. Don't sacrifice your health just to get the book done. It won't be worth it in the end. Your unhealthy habits aren't helping you. They're actually the reason you're struggling. Prioritize your well-being and write from that place. This was something that I didn't fully realize and process until months after I finished those final edits, realizing that there are parts and seasons of me writing the book where I isolated myself a bit too much, where I wasn't getting good sleep, where I wasn't eating right, where I just was sacrificing my health to try to get the book done as fast as I can because that was my desire, because I kept passing these deadlines and it became increasingly difficult for me to continue writing the book. And I didn't really understand that, oh, these unhealthy habits aren't helping you go faster. They're the reason why it's so difficult. So there were some points during the writing of the book where I was able to realize that and try to correct it the best I could. But it wasn't until months later that I realized, like, oh yeah, I missed a lot of things and responsibilities in my life that I should have paid more attention to. I ended up reconciling all that these days. Things are all good now. But yeah, I didn't initially know how to handle that pressure of having to work on such a huge creative project in a short amount of time. And now I know a lot better. I've learned a lot, so I'm ready to approach the next book a lot healthier. 6. Don't save the hard parts, like citations, until the very end. Don't avoid the stress by passing it to your future self. It may not feel like it, but you always have time to treat your future self better. Procrastination was an unhealthy pattern of mine, thinking that I'll be able to write the book faster and better if I could just push away the hard parts to the very end without realizing that it was only creating more problems for myself, because then I was stuck struggling with all the hard parts at one time while I was editing the book. Treat your future self better. 7. Don't be afraid to give away your best ideas. Creativity comes easier the more you act on it. New ideas will always come. This is especially difficult for people who put out a bunch of different things like videos, articles, blogs, and now a book. It feels like whenever you get an idea, you get really excited about it and you like it, but sometimes with that comes the thought, oh, but should I save this? Should I save this idea for something that a lot more people will see, or save this idea to attach to a different set of ideas that might make it sound better or sound more accessible? And sometimes that's based on a fear that eventually you'll run out of ideas. So you have to save them and make sure you don't give the best ones out so easily. And while I was writing the book, I was covering so much in the book. If you've read the book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And as I was doing that, I had these thoughts of, well, should I save this for a different book or for another project? Should I be giving out all of this right now? And I eventually had to be like, well, yeah, this is what the book is. This is what I feel the book requires. So let's give it all away. I didn't save any ideas that I liked more for something else. We put it all in there. And the big thing with creativity in general is that you're able to come up with ideas the more you act on them. It's easier to create things when you're already creating things. Trust that new ideas will always arrive. Last one, 8. Don't worry about the next book while you're writing this one. Every time you get an idea for the next one, just quickly write it down and put it away with all the other ideas you'll flesh out when the time comes. And that's what I did throughout writing the whole book. I actually had the idea for the second book before I even started writing the first book. Fortunately, both those ideas pretty much came around the same time. And so every time I would get an idea that connected with the ideas I wanted to write about in the second book, I'd have this big note on my phone, just long list of ideas and stories and references, and I would just add it to that list, knowing that eventually I'm gonna pull out a Word doc and put it all on there, flesh it out, and try to put together another book proposal. So now I'm just barely starting to flesh some of that out, but I'm really excited for the next book, and I have a whole bunch of ideas. And when I was afraid of giving away all the best ideas that I could possibly have in the first book, turns out I was afraid for nothing. So yeah, we'll talk about the next book when it gets closer to it and I flesh it out more and able to actually articulate it, but it's not gonna come out for a long time. But go get this book, The God Who Riots. I'm really proud of this, and I know a lot of you will really enjoy it. And I hope you appreciated this video and that it was helpful to you. Let me know in the comments any lessons you've learned about the creative process, or writing, or making things, singing, any of that stuff, because I think there are certain elements of struggle within all those different creative processes that we can all really relate with. And thank you to everyone supporting me on my Patreon, patreon.com/Damon Garcia. Go check me out. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at whoisdamon. Subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.